going.
So I would just like to start out by clarifying something really quick. Libertarians are not liberals. We probably hate liberals more than most conservatives. The reason being is because we think liberals and conservatives take our original ideas, then twist them to support government intervention in people's lives. I am the president of the local Pragmatic Libertarian Society. I founded it. It's a non-for-profit. I actually have it copyrighted, the name. Now, what I strive to do as a libertarian is make sure that there is absolute liberty for all people. I don't care what their sexual orientation is. I don't care if they're hookers. I don't care if they're black. I don't care if they're white. They can be atheist, Christian. I want all people to have equal freedom. And so long as everyone has equal freedom, I think we have a just society. Now, my biggest problem...
Oh, you missed it!
My biggest problem with Benjamin's speech, I mean, I'm really good friends with Benjamin, but he kept quoting a libertarian. He was quoting Greg Gutfeld about libertarianism. And, you know, it's very interesting, though, that Greg Gutfeld is actually all for gay rights. His issue with the parades is that people on the left think they're tolerant. They think that they have this banner that makes them morally superior to conservatives and libertarians because they promote government intervention to support their equality. Now, I as a libertarian think there should be no government intervention in just about every aspect of life. And Benjamin brought up a point about private currency, which I'll address in a bit. But on the issue of gay marriage, I am a Christian. Moreover, I'm a Southern Baptist. I think homosexuality is a sin, and I think marriage is between a man, a woman, and God. So I think literally homosexuals cannot get married. But it's not the government who decides who can and can't get married. People should have the right to marry whoever they want. They should have the right to have sex with whomever they please, so long as they're not small children who they'd be raping. So long, in my opinion, so long as every exchange in society is voluntary, it should not be banned. Let's say I'm a nice young John, I'm feeling lonely, I'm going to go to a brothel. The prostitute consents, I give her my money, she gives me a service. It's no different than any other service in our economy, it's just it goes against the morality of some people. And that's what I really want to hit on, this idea of morality. Both liberals and conservatives want to promote morality through government. It makes a lot of sense. We all want to feel that we're morally right. We all want to be righteous people. We all want to feel like we're, at the end of the day, good people. The problem is we all disagree on what a good person is. As Milton Friedman, one of the greatest libertarians of all time, said, the issue is not whether I am right, but the issue is that I can't be 100% sure that my opponent's wrong. We can't. There is no absolutes in life. There are, in my opinion, real absolutes in the universe, but there's not absolute agreement on that. So I could be absolutely wrong, or I could be absolutely right. Either way, I can't know for sure. I can't use a government to say, you're wrong, I'm right, follow my morality, follow what I want to do. That is just ludicrous. All it does is gives us this utopian idea that we can create a perfect society. Adolf Hitler told his people, look, if we get rid of this group that disagrees with us, we can have a perfect society. Stalin, Mao, they told the people, if we get rid of these rich people who are so different from us, we'll have this beautiful society where the wealth is shared, yada, yada, yada. But all it is political rhetoric. It's leaders trying to deceive their people into giving up their rights. So on the issue of gay marriage, I think we need to repeal DOMA. I think all government regulation on marriage must be banned constitutionally. I think you should have no regulations on marriage. The only regulation should be the same as on rape. If I molest a small child and I get married to them first, it doesn't change the fact that I'm a rapist. And another key point to make is that I'm a pragmatic libertarian. So I don't agree with the Libertarian Party, and I think they're actually not conducive to liberty. I think the Libertarian Party actually hurts liberty by promoting extremely partisan views without any way of compromising. The other thing is they split votes between the Republican and the Democratic Party, and it just doesn't do anyone any good. I'm a Friedman Republican, which means I'm a Libertarian with a little L and a Republican with a capital R. I'm not a Republican because I agree with the Republicans, I actually hate them. But I know that if I ever want to get elected in politics, if I want my voice to be heard, I have to be a Republican or a Democrat. The Libertarian Party, how often do you actually see them on Fox News or MSNBC? You don't see them. You see Republicans, you see Democrats. I would love the third party to take off. You know, if the Libertarian Party could just go gung-ho, I would be all for it, but it won't. It won't ever take off because at the end of the day, we have a society, a culture that's entrenched in the two-party system. So we have to look at our own cultural differences whenever we look into whether we need multiple parties or not. So on to the next issue, which I think we need to address, is the private currency. Now, Benjamin talked about how you couldn't get it accepted everywhere, how money would not work. Well, here's my question. Do you have a credit card or a debit card? Yes. Are those created by the government? No, they're created by the private sector. Can you use those? Well, of course you can use them. You use them every day. A private currency system would work very similar to that. You would have maybe solid currency if a bank chooses to print solid currency. Maybe you could use a credit card, maybe a debit card. Like you could use Bitcoin, a major private currency right now. But what you use with a private currency is whenever you're getting this, you're investing in the bank to get a hold of their currency. You're not doing what a government does. A government forces you to pay taxes. A government can take money and print more and then cause inflation, lowering the value of your dollars. A private sector company couldn't have inflation because if they did, people would leave the bank. Nobody wants their money to be put in one day be worth 20 US dollars and the next day be only worth 1. That's the beauty of the market. The problem with governments nowadays, they're not listening to the people. They don't care what the people think because they know the people are so biased against one another, they'll tear each other's throats out as opposed to actually solve the issues of today. But with a private system, everybody is going to be motivated based off of what's going to make them money. Is it going to make me more money as a bank to rip off my customers or to actually provide them with legitimate service? Ripping them off may make me a lot of short-term money, but nobody's going to want to go to a bank that's a Ponzi scheme. And that's why we do need some level of government and private life. There are some libertarians who are anarcho-capitalists. They believe we should have private police forces, we should have private everything, yada, 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 but they're just idiots, I'm afraid. They think that people in the private sector and people in the public sector are different. I disagree. I think people are the same, and I think people naturally are motivated by self-interest. Whether that's in the private or the public sector, I do not trust a corporate head any more than I trust the President of the United States. And another big problem with mainstream libertarianism is they support Reaganomics. They think it would be fine to just lower taxes on the rich. And this is a terrible idea. Whenever we saw Reaganomics, we did see an increase in economic growth. No one denies that. What we also saw was an increase in income inequality. Now, in libertarianism is what's called left libertarianism or libertarian socialism. And it's the idea that whenever you do things, you should do all things voluntarily, but these socialists do believe in forming a communist society. They just don't want it mandated by government. They want people to voluntarily give up their wages. They want people to voluntarily do all these things. And while I'm not one of them, I get the concept. If there are a bunch of people consenting to give away their wealth, more power to them. I think that's a brilliant idea. If that's what you think is morally right, go for it. I just don't share your same opinion. But with income inequality and Reaganomics, I think we should lower taxes on all people. But I think the first thing we should do is get rid of the income tax. And there's a few reasons for this. The income tax, first of all, in my opinion, is simply stealing people's hard-earned wages. A better tax would be a transactions tax, very similar to a sales tax, where I buy a good and then I have to pay a percentage of what the value of that good is. You could have it to where it goes both ways. The seller has to pay a portion of the value and the buyer. I don't really care which way you go, but either way, you need a way for the consumers to pay based off of what they're putting into the economy. Nobody can deny that the government is key to the economy. Our government has to keep the economy somewhat stable. It has to protect the nation from invasion. So you have to pay somehow for national defense. You have to pay for police to protect the citizens from getting stolen from. So I'm of the opinion that taxes should be voluntary and that you technically don't have to pay taxes. If I wanted to live out in the middle of the nowhere, not buy from any government company, not go into any private sector, not go on the government-made roads, I would never have to pay taxes if I was completely self-sufficient. But if I'm going to take from society, I have to give back. And the biggest problem with income tax is, yeah, we tax the rich more, but they have a lot more loopholes than the poor. Likewise, look at the middle class. Whenever we see loopholes for poor people and rich people, who bears the burden? The middle class. At the end of the day, we have to realize we should all be equal, regardless of whether we're poor, middle class, rich. We should all pay the same rate. But see, that's the real advantage of a transaction tax. If the transaction tax were the same rate, let's say it was 15%, just to throw a number out there. Let's say you had a 15% transaction tax. The rich would be paying a lot more taxes than the poor people because they buy a lot. They live extravagant lifestyles. They would put into society what they got out of it. They would help people. And the other problem, I think, with a lot of libertarians is they believe in no welfare whatsoever. I do not believe in the abolition of welfare. I believe in replacing welfare with jobs. I think the government should be the employer of last resort. If you have a society where you don't just hand things out to people, you'll have a better society all around. And another problem I have with welfare is that Lyndon B. Johnson and FDR, during their presidencies, both recognized that welfare would have a terrible effect on the black community. They admitted to it. In fact, the minimum wage, one of the favorite signs of social progress, one of the great ways supposedly protecting people, whenever we were passing it, we had a representative from our state, his name was John Cochran, who said we needed the minimum wage to keep the Negro back in his place, in his proper place below the white man. The reason is because the minimum wage prevents low-skilled workers from getting jobs. Look at inner-city schools. Whenever you get your public schooling, you pay through property taxes. In the inner city, they're slums, they're ghettos. They can't afford to put a bunch of money into it because there's not much money to be taxed. The value of the property is low, so inner city students are at an unfair starting point. They're starting out low. They don't have equal education with other people in more rural communities or in more rich areas of the urban population. So you're starting these people out with low skills, low value. You're putting them into a society that is filled with crime, and you're expecting them to somehow be able to come out on top. That, to me, is ridiculous. We need to find a way to get these people jobs, to make the education system equal, and I think on education, the best way to do that is to start making schools compete like businesses. Let teachers sell their talents. Let teachers do what they need to do. If you have a crappy teacher, you shouldn't be paying the same property tax to go to a crap school. If you are going to deal with education, I think we need to go through a little bit of a process. First, we need to get the federal government to where they go to a school voucher program. The second thing we need to do is give the authority to the state governments, but still make sure the federal government is there for quality control. The next step is to devolve it to the local government, still keeping the federal government to make sure that there are still qualities being met. But I think the end objective of our education system needs to be to privatize it, make it where it's private business. Now, a lot of people say, well, then the poor couldn't afford schooling. There's a little bit of a problem here. The poor already do pay for schooling. It's called the property tax. If you let these teachers compete on the private market, it will lower the price of education. Instead of paying this blanket property tax, you can actually pay for schooling individualized to your students. Let's say I have a special needs child. There would be special needs schools that would pop up to fill that niche in the free market. There would be students, let's say like me, who are really interested in politics and the humanities. I would go to a political school as opposed to a school that tries to evenly distribute everything. What we need in our education system is specialization, which a federal government can't do. You can't have a one-size-fits-all policy like No Child Left Behind or Obama's new plan. You need something that is individualized to the student. And the only way you're going to do that is in the private sector. So on the issue of gays, we should have no regulation. On the issue of private currencies are less likely to do inflation and will listen to the people because they get their money from them. And on every other issue, if there is less government, it is good, but we do need certain levels of government in modern society. We need government to make sure that businesses not become tyrannical, which I think is a serious threat in our capitalist society. So, there you go.
I can't take you seriously because you have a shrinky dink on your ID.
I know, it's pretty shrinky dink.
I had a question for you.
I made that.
Do you intend to stay in this area? You're Barrett, right?
Mhm.
I'm Mrs. Ray. It's nice to meet you. If you intend to stay in this area, would you have to run as a Republican candidate in order to get elected?
Yep.
Okay. If you moved to Kansas City, would you change to a Democrat in order to get elected there?
Most likely.
Okay. Do you think that happens frequently with politicians?
I think the problem is that to me, politicians, very few of them actually believe in the ideals they claim to. They simply believe in what's going to get them elected. I think the only way we're going to actually get the ideas that I want, the idea of liberty, is by coming to the middle. I think what people need to realize is that the party doesn't matter, the letter in front of the name, it's what the ideas are. And I think liberty is the only idea that can be universally applied because it allows people to have those differences in opinions and to act freely.
Okay, I have another question about the idea of a sales tax as opposed to income taxes and property taxes possibly. Let's say Logan is rich and I'm poor, and he decides he's not going to buy the boat and the Mercedes and the big house. He's going to live, frugally. And as a poor person, I go to Walmart and spend $100 on my groceries, and I have to pay $15 of that towards tax. He goes to Walmart and spends $100 on groceries. He only has to pay $15. How do you deal with that inequity then for the poor and the rich?
Well, I would say, at the end of the day, you're going to have some level of inequality no matter what you do. I think that's just a bygone conclusion. But on that issue, I would say most rich people don't hoard their money. And I think the biggest problem with our system today is we don't tax capital gains. If you go into the stock market, there's very little taxation on that. I think that should be included in the sales tax. These rich people who don't buy from regular companies, they still maintain their wealth somehow. The idea is to make sure that however you get your wealth, you still have to contribute back. There's no such thing as a perfect system, but I would also point out that with a private currency system, you would have different levels of society using a different currency. If I'm a poor guy, I'm going to a different bank than the rich guy, obviously. As a rich guy, what I think the way the system needs to be is 15% of what that number of dollars you would be spending is. So if I'm a rich guy, not only am I paying the same rate as the poor guy buying more, but I'm buying more with the rich man's dollar. I'm buying more with whatever dollar the rich people choose to resort to, which means I'm paying a lot more because my value is higher. Now, if I'm a poor person, this means I don't have to pay as much on banking, and it also, if you actually implemented a workfare policy like I would like, the government will provide them with their food anyways. They would be paid with food, shelter, clothing, and education for their children, and that would be the best way to go about dealing with income inequality.
Okay. You guys have
Mine
questions?
hurts. You're just listening. You're not even talking.
On the issue of liberty, what is your stance on legalization of marijuana?
Oh, I believe in the legalization of all drugs.
Expound on that a little bit.
Well, I think what we need to recognize is the problem with drugs in today's society is the violence that it causes.
I don't like math, but I'll do anything else.
All right.
So Trevin, in my society, you can do as much meth as you want.
I wouldn't do math.
Well, then as much pot as you want.
Yep.
So, I think the problem people have is they think, oh, well, drugs are the reason there's violence. That's not the case. The reason there's violence is because people can't afford the drugs. If I want drugs, I'm an addict right now because of the drug cartels have a monopoly. When you have a monopoly in any kind of business, you can jack up the price because you're the sole distributor. You're the person who's making all the product. You're the one who's moving it out. You have complete vertical integration. So this means that you have no way of actually distributing this out at a cost-effective price, which means the poor just get poorer, they turn to crime, and because there's no government actual oversight over these illegal markets, you have no way of regulating whether it gets to minors or not. So what I would say is if you legalize all drugs, first you get rid of the drug cartels, because they have no market now. Now you can buy pot at Walmart. I mean, your market's completely off. And if you don't want to sell pot as a businessman, you don't have to. It makes sure everybody's rights are respected. And I think another thing we have to do is we have to make driving while under the influence a stricter offense. A part where I really differ from a lot of libertarians is that I believe in the death penalty, but I don't believe in imprisonment for anything other than assault, basically. Assault, theft, fraud. I think that any problem that you could solve by just paying someone back. Let's say I steal something from your house. I steal like your stereo. If I can return that stereo and fix all the damage, I don't think that person should have to go to prison. Now, on the other hand, let's say I caused emotional damages. Then you would go through a regular lawsuit process where I would have to pay you back. I believe in a restitution-based criminal justice system because I don't think I have the right to punish any other person. I'm not God. I'm not, I have no right of knowing whether or not what the person was doing was right or wrong. I can have my opinion, but it's not set in stone.
What if you were raped?
If I was raped, I believe in the death penalty there. And the reason I believe in the death penalty is because murder and rape are normally caused by deep-seated problems that you don't normally get rid of. And yes, there is the argument that innocent people could die in the system. That's why I think that if you have 10 to 20 years of death row, if you can't be proven innocent by that point, I mean, no matter what you do, some innocent man is going to get punished in society. But I think you have to look at what saves the most innocent lives. If you take murderers and rapists off the streets, prevent them from putting guards and other inmates in danger, I think you save the most amount of lives, which means you save the most amount of liberty, because the most fundamental right is your right to live. I mean, you can't have any of your other liberties if you're dead. I mean, once you're dead, it's game over.
So you said that you would get rid of, if legalization of all drugs would get rid of the drug cartels because they don't market it anymore.
Yes.
Right? Okay, well, Colorado just legalized marijuana, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And it's $200 a gram.
Yeah.
You're telling me that no one's going to try to get it cheaper?
And that's the problem. The reason it's $200 a gram is because Colorado has taxed and subsidized the entire industry. Government regulation of the market and government intervention through stimulus or through taxation is what causes the problem. You go in on marijuana and say, well, we just made it where you can get it really cheap, but we're going to make sure you have to pay $100 worth of taxes. You're just feeding into the drug dealer's hands. It makes the drug cartel stronger, and you get none of the benefits. You have to have wholesale legalization. You need to get rid of vice taxes that are trying to enforce morality, because we have no right to try and bribe people into being moral. If people want to be moral, they have to be on their own opinion. Me as a Christian, I think you have to voluntarily accept Christ. You have to voluntarily become morality. You can't just say, I force you to, and that magically solves the problem. You have to let people decide what they want to do.
Okay, so you talk a lot about liberty and how great liberty is, and all these things you're doing are in the name of liberty, but how many of your political beliefs are actually those of the Libertarian Party?
That's right. Very few of mine are of the Libertarian Party.
So how can you say you're a part of the Libertarian Party?
I'm not a part of the Libertarian Party. I'm part of the Pragmatic Libertarian Society. I'm a libertarian, and I'm actually part of the Republican Party because I think that's the best way to get elected. The problem is that the Libertarian Party are not true libertarians.
So you're
They
just,
never
like,
have been, they never will be.
You're just creating your own political party in society.
Well, the
For
society is
funsies?
not a political party. It's more of a think tank. And as for the issue of the Republican Party, I disagree with it, but it's the best way to get elected. But on the issue of whether the Libertarian Party actually adheres to libertarian values, Murray Rothbard, Ludwig von Mises, Milton Friedman, none of them were members of the Libertarian Party because they all disagree with it. In fact, Murray Rothbard, who was an anarcho-capitalist, was even willing to sponsor Republican candidate Pat Buchanan just because he realized the Libertarian Party would fail. And by the way, Pat Buchanan, not a libertarian by any stretch of the imagination, a complete scumbag. But, you know, different issue for a different day.
So basically, you side with libertarian philosophers, but no actual politicians that are libertarian?
Exactly.
Okay.
The politicians who claim to be libertarian are really just watered-down idiots trying to sound cool. Like, here would be a good example. Ron Paul, Rand Paul. They're Republicans. They claim to be libertarians, but they admit they're libertarian conservatives. When it came to the gay rights issue, they said, oh, well, let the states do it because they're always so good at civil rights issues. Sorry, the problem we have with our society is we trust the federal government with too much, and we trust the states with the wrong things.
Would you agree that to an extent today it's seen as cool to be a liberal?
Oh yeah, it's so cool to be a liberal. It's not cool to be a libertarian. You kidding me? What's cool on a college campus is to be a full-on Marxist. Look at, like, Georgia, what was his name? There was this economics professor at George Mason University, Walter E. Williams. He's a really famous libertarian. He's proved why the Great Society New Deal failed, is a African American, came from the slums. He's very big on social welfare policy. That's his specialty in economics. And whenever he was looking into the university bias, he found that almost all the universities were biased against conservative and libertarian ideals in favor of a more Marxist worldview. Now, is it cool to be a libertarian? I think it's cool. I think I'm a pretty snazzy guy. But is it cool in the mainstream? This would be the best test. If I went on Fox News and MSNBC and said, I'm a libertarian, the conservatives would call me an idiot and say I was going to smoke pot all my life. The liberals would say that I'm an anarchist, and that would be the end of the discussion. They wouldn't take me seriously because, like I've said before, both sides are intolerant. I truly believe that when you look at the differences between both parties, it's just a different way they start. They both want tyranny. It's just their idea of morality they want to enforce. And you have to remember, when I say tyranny, I don't mean full-on dictatorship. I think tyranny is any time you restrict the liberties of another person. I think, laws against gay marriage, that's tyranny. I think certain tax policies could even be called tyrannical. I think whenever your government slaughters innocent civilians abroad, that's tyranny. I think that you have to look at the issues under the idea of liberty because at the end of the day, there's only one thing we all have, and that's free will. That's the only thing that's just naturally ours. And if you violate the right to free will, nature, if you believe nature is what formed us, or God, if you think it was a God that formed us, gave people that free will. And I think it's blasphemy for people, whether to rebel against their nature or their God, to say that they have the right to enforce their beliefs on others. If nature, the natural selection, or God, through creation, who made us, it was laissez-faire, it was hands-off. He let people, or nature allows people, to make whatever decisions are going to benefit themselves the most. At the end of the day, we have to realize that we have no right to coerce another person to our viewpoint. We can try to persuade them, yes. We can try to explain the superiority of our views, yes, but you can't use a government because at the end of the day, nasty things happen.
So you want liberty for everyone. That's the goal in mind.
Liberty for everyone, not for people who violate the liberties of others.
Okay. Whenever you legalize drugs, right?
Yes.
So bath salts, people are eating all these faces off. How are you protecting those people? How are you protecting the random people that get their faces eaten off?
I have a question. Do people already do bath salts right now?
Rarely. I guarantee they would do it a little
Okay,
more.
so let me explain something. I can buy bath salts for their intended purpose of being used as bath salts. I can smoke weed for the intended purpose of medical. But either way, you can still get it right now. And let's face it, we're high schoolers, we all know this. Anywhere in the city of Nixa, you can find pot pretty easy. You just have to know the right people. I could go around and probably ask a good half of you, and you'd be able to direct me right to a dealer, or right to someone I could ask to find a dealer. At the end of the day, drugs are accessible. They are incredibly easy to get. And if we wanted to, we could all be total stoners. The reason people choose not to is because of their morality and because they don't want to get in trouble from their parents.
Drugs are easier to get than alcohol.
It's true. I know that for a fact. So like I could, and that's the other advantage to legalizing these drugs. It's harder to get alcohol because it's legal and you have to have a license to sell it. If you make it to where you have to have a license to sell weed and all this stuff, you can't just have Joe Schmo out in the back of the alley say, here's this drug, I promise I didn't do anything bad with it. You know, that's the other problem. A lot of the drugs that you get sold aren't actually drugs. They're just random cleaners they put together and said, oh, well, this will look like crack, so we'll tell them that's crack and they'll just do it. Yeah, no, it's a bad idea.
There is some truth to that, guys. We talked about lacing pot with heroin, like they do in Jefferson City, to get people hooked on heroin.
They used to do that with
At least
alcohol.
legal, you can have those.
Yeah, you can take those.
Yeah.
Combination, yeah.
They used to lace
Well,